Committee of the Whole. And we're here through via Zoom. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I'd like the approval of the agenda. If anybody so choose, I can say it. Moved by Danny, seconded by Kathy. Any no additions? There was one, there, if I remember right, 6E is off. We're not discussing 6E tonight.
6E will be deferred until the next meeting.
Very good. So, okay, we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Or raise your right hand. Contrary minded, there's your left. Motion carried. Any conflict of interest? Seeing none, we'll move on. The only person that called in is Councillor Murphy. We have Councillor Luciana Blanc. Oh, there he is. I thought he was going to be on phone, but I see him here. Right aboard is Trustee Bode, I think. Welcome, Luciana. Richard, you're on unmute if you could, Richard.
Yes, he just got a call from Junior and he's trying to get on. So if there's anything Scott can do to help him, go at it, because I didn't know what to tell him.
Very good. Thank you very much. But Scott will do his best to get him connected.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to number 3, presentations, and we don't have any. Number 4, we have the adoption of the minutes of the irregular council meeting, minutes of May the 12th. Anybody would like to move that?
So moved.
Moved by Richard, seconded by Glenn, Councillor Digdon. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Never mind. Raise your right hand, people. Thank you very much. I'll get used to this after a while. Contrary-minded, left hand. Motion carried. Business arising from the minutes. I'll get to it, guys. Give me a chance here. Business arising from the minutes. Number 5, fire department's financial statements. Anything on that? I don't see any attachments.
No, Lori has an update on that. We can chat about it.
Okay, Lori, if you would, please.
Sure. So we heard back from all departments, but only 5 submitted financial statements. And those 5 do fundraising. 4 departments, we received no financial statements or a note saying that they were in the same position that they were in last year, that COVID didn't affect them in any way. So, I mean, as far as amounts go, I'm not sure we can discuss that tonight, but just know that, you know, there are 5 departments that could possibly be without fundraising this year.
Very good. So that gives us an indication of, you know, where they possibly stand. And Alain, would that be for further discussion as we move forward? Maybe at the next meeting, table that to next meeting, or what do you think at the moment?
Well, I mean, you're not necessarily in the position to make a decision on amounts, but you might be in the position to give some guidance to staff to prepare under what qualifications would you consider some financial support for these fire departments. So I would recommend that would be done by policy. I would call it, you know, I mean, the policy is one that would likely expire after COVID expires. And it's a policy that you can implement this year. And the advantage of a policy is that you can actually create an application program where, and by application, I don't mean that they'll have to do a lot of work to apply, but just that how does a fire department prove that they are requiring of the money, and what are the things that you would like to see as council. So any sort of conversation at the council level that you can come to an agreement on would be helpful for us to develop a policy if that is your interest to do. The fundraising, I will say, based on what I've seen, it's a little bit all over the map. Like, so some of them participate in Chase the Ace, right? Those, you know, they can be extraordinarily successful. They can be, you know, the ace can be picked pretty early. So those are a little unpredictable fundraisers in the best of times. And then there's also things like bottle drives and other things that I imagine they might be able to do later in the year. In fact, so there's no absolute indication, excuse me, there's no absolute indication that they're not going to be able to fundraise, right? So in certain cases, now other cases, it's quite obvious they're not going to be able to. So that's what we know. We still have to look at a little bit more, but the more guidance we get from you as council, the better we can represent you with a policy. So if you want to start that conversation in this meeting, we will be taking what your interests are and trying to build something that supports what you're interested in doing.
Councillor Albright, yes, see your hands up.
I think I would like to see the financials before kind of making a decision. It would give us a better idea, I think, of, and I understand what you're saying, 5 departments, 5 very probably different fundraising needs, but at least it would give me an idea, like a skeleton of what's out there, kind of in order to make a decision as to how we can help. So if we could get that at some point in order to further conversations, I guess that would probably be useful, I think.
Right on, Councillor Albright. Councillor Bork?
Yeah, exactly what Councillor Albright was saying. I'd like to see all the finance statements of all the fire departments, and probably too, some fire departments, I'll say, like, just speak for the East Pimlico Fire Department, they do their fundraising, it would be like next week in June, early June, so that's not going to be possible. So maybe we have to look at that. When do they do regularly their fundraising, like certain events? So I like to know when they do their regular events as well.
Thank you, Councillor Bork. Anybody else would like to weigh in on this? I know that as for the Islands and District Fire Department, usually they have a Roppy Pie sale in March, and then they have the flea market at the end of May, and those are 2 of the bigger fundraisers they do, and that both of them are canceled for sure. So I'm sure they'll be looking, you know, they'll be struggling a bit to make ends meet. But like Councillor Albright said, I do agree. If we could see some numbers, easier to make a decision. Anybody would like to maybe make a motion to guide staff of where to go from here? So, some kind of a suggested motion? Councillor Bork?
So given with what Nicole and I have said, and you, Guy, maybe they could continue with that and make a policy or come up with a policy or something like that, and we can go from there. So I don't know how long it's going to take. So maybe next meeting or the next month. I'm not sure.
So you're making that a motion?
I'll make that a motion, but I don't know if there's anything that should be included into the motion.
Would anybody care to second that motion? Seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Was it Councillor Donaldson, or did you have a question?
Just a question. If the file's already being worked on, do we actually need a motion to keep it going forward? Clarity from LN, please.
I think you can certainly have a motion to actually establish a policy is, I believe, different than what we were instructed to do prior to. I think we were simply gathering information. So if you're instructing a policy, what I'm understanding is that you're interested, obviously you're interested in doing some sort of funding, some sort of fund support. That's what you're telling staff based on what we have here. So I think it's slightly different. And so I think it would be okay to do by motion. Certainly it's very clear to us that if it's positively voted on, that we would develop a policy to in some way support.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought we was gonna be looking at numbers and then moving forward from there after we see the numbers. But if it's a motion that's needed, I'll second it.
Very good, Councillor Donaldson. Any other discussion? Any, your hand? Lori, you've got that, have you? Oh, Warden News?
CAO, do you have enough information, or did you want us to give you a little bit more information before you did the work on the policy? That's what I understood when you first started discussing this.
Well, I mean, I think what we can do is establish the guts of the policy that would say, okay, your interest is to support, and that could be supported with the financial information that we will be receiving. I mean, the more guidance I can have now in terms of what your interest is, the more accurate my first draft is going to be. Now, I fully expect to bring a draft to you, and you will be making changes to that based on what your interest is. So it's kind of like chicken egg. Like, I haven't really given you too much to make a decision, and then you know, and I require your guidance to do the same. So it's so I think it's okay, Warden, but any sort of guidance that you have around like limits, or you know, what kind of fundraisers might qualify, or just not, or just keep it open. It can be discussed in the motion, because the motion is to build a policy.
Okay.
Councillor Bork?
Yeah, maybe we should look at too, just say the government, the federal government, they're always, or the provincial, they're always saying that you have to have a loss of a certain amount, percentage or whatever, before they start giving you maybe something like that. There should be a percentage of loss. I don't know the exact amounts, but before we can give a percentage to the fire departments. I don't know, we can go a line, something like that. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Warden News, I believe I cut you off. You had something else. Are you okay? Sorry about that. Yeah. Alain, does that give you a little more information, like a percentage maybe, or?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'll build a policy unless I'm told otherwise. I'll build a policy to support the fire departments that actually do fundraising, or that have or that have a women's auxiliary, or I guess auxiliary organization that fundraises primarily on their behalf. So it's to reward the fire departments that are volunteering over and above just fighting fire. They're actually generating additional money for their fire department. So I think if you have not done a fundraiser in the last 12 months and you're a fire department, you're unlikely to qualify. That's how we'll draft the policy. And I think that's fair, because it rewards those that have been going above and beyond. And then there might be pieces of fundraisers that we will specifically exclude, like things like events like lobster dinners and stuff like that is right down the middle. That should be like, those are the kind of fundraising that this policy will support, because there's no way they can do that now, right? There's certain things they cannot do, and the things that are delayed, then we may treat differently. Right? We may say, well, we're not going to pay it right now. Let's wait until the fall. And then if you know you can't do that fundraiser, and I'll use a bottle drive as an example, then we will consider it at that time. So there's all sorts of different ways the policy can be written. Those are 2 or 3 of the things I'll write in, and obviously it's your policy. So I mean, that's the track I would go down on your behalf. So let me know if that's completely wrong.
Right on, CEO Muse. That's certainly what you spoke about. For myself, you've got a broad range there to go about, and I guess once you bring us something, it'll make it us easier to say, possibly, no, that's not good. Yes, that's good, and type of thing. So if there's no other questions, then Nala, you seem to be clear on where you're going until you bring it to us, whichever meeting it'll be, the first one in May or the COW, end of the month, whichever it is. Certainly will. I don't think the fire departments are in dire need at the moment. Hopefully, I don't think they are. So okay, so we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Contrary-minded, left hand. Motion carried. Thank you, everyone. Okay, on 5B, we have fire water holes. And is it Lori that would have that also? Or is it Alain?
No, I don't have anything on it.
That one is me.
Okay, Alain, go ahead.
We can actually, the discussion can actually fall into the capital budget discussion because we do have an amount in the capital budget for that.
Okay, first we can wait till we get there then.
Sure.
Very good. Okay, very good. Thank you, Alain. We'll move on now to the number 6 for decision, election 2020. And we've got some attachments on that. And this was there was a letter written by Mayor Mood, who's the president of the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities. And she said sent via email about the reasons that she had felt the reasons to the NSFM why there possibly should not be an election this fall. And there was a response on the attachment number 1 from Minister Porter stating the reason that he didn't feel that there was any objections on his part in his department that we should have the elections. So from what I'm reading on the second attachment, NSFM has sent, I guess, a challenge. You could call that a challenge to Minister Porter's letter, stating some of the reasons that it could be not a good time to have the election this fall. And some of those reasons were there's lack of consultation, the cost, the democratic process, health concern, economics, experienced council, when if there was a new council coming in, and there's as we've all seen on the attachment, does anybody have any further? They're not asking us to send CAO News anything that I've seen there to send us a letter of approval or to anything like that. What I could see was that would be mostly for information, is it? Would you say?
It is, unless council wants to share a position. I mean, as an independent council, you can share your position either with the NSFM or with the minister directly. That's up to you. I just I felt that it was a political issue that you may want to have a discussion about, and so there's no recommendation. It is entirely a political conversation that would occur, and the letter that the NSFM wrote was pretty comprehensive in terms of some of the reasons why an election in October, while seemingly far away, may be best to be deferred.
Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, I guess I got a little lost there. The May 13th letter to Pamu from the minister must be a response from an earlier letter that they had sent, and the letter May 20th is to the Premier of Nova Scotia, disagreeing with the letter that they sent out on the 13th and giving reasons for why they disagree with the letter of the 13th. Have I got that
Correct.
clear now?
Yes, and just to be clear, the original letter that was sent to the minister didn't explicitly ask for a collaborative process, right? So when the NSFM asked the minister to consider, the NSFM knew that it would be a ministerial decision, but I think they made the assumption that there'd be some communication between the NSFM and the Department of Municipal Affairs prior to a decision being made. So as a board member of the NSFM, I can share that the letter went in and then there was silence, and then suddenly a decision was made by the minister. And so that took the NSFM by surprise, because they felt that, seeing as it's a municipal election, they might want to engage with municipalities, maybe. So that took them a bit by surprise, which was one of the reasons why the letter to the Premier was written. So thank you for clarifying, because I think that for those that are watching, you may have seen that letter initially when it went out, but it wasn't attached in the agenda. It's a good observation.
Thank you, Councillor Dawson. Yes, that clarified it for me too. I wasn't totally positive on what was that. Would you, yes, Warden Muse.
I guess we have to assume that the election is going to take place in October. They haven't made any other decisions at this point. This is the only letter that we have that says that it's a go. We haven't had anything, so I guess we, as councillors and as municipalities, have to start preparing for the election, because that's all we know at this point, is that yes, it's a go. It's a go. Unless something changes, I don't think that we can wait in hopes that it's going to change, and all of a sudden we're close enough that it's going to be a lot of work. It's like okay, the returning officer. Apparently she was going to be trained, right? From what I heard. So the government is proceeding with all these, the training of whoever needs to be trained. They're also suggesting that we don't do a lot of enumeration in ours, but some municipalities like cities and whatever, they almost have to. But I think they're suggesting that they don't even, they probably won't be able to do that, to just go with the last federal election. The federal election was after the provincial, so you would take the latest list of electors to go with that, because so I'm assuming that we're going to go. I don't expect them to change their mind unless there's a second wave of this virus that comes along just as strong as what the first wave was. You see, because they're still talking about a second wave. But anyway, from what we know now, I think we have to prepare that and assume that the election is going to take place.
Thank you, Councillor Warden Muse. Yes, Councillor Dawson.
Is it if it comes down to it, campaigning door to door, whose responsibility is that to make regulations? If they had to be made, would it be the municipality itself, or would it be provincial guidelines put out there? Because I know we're only just going into June, but people have a way different level of paranoia about what's going on. So I'm not, me or probably a lot of other people wouldn't be very comfortable knocking on people's doors the way some people are reacting to this pandemic that's going on. So it may be all fine by August and September, or September and October, I mean, but there's no way of knowing that. So I'm just wondering if would be such thing as guidelines on how you approach people.
I think that the Department of Municipal Affairs is reaching out to NSFM to try to get some consistent guidelines around that. I imagine the answer to your question will be mostly health and safety driven. So I don't at this point, I'm not picturing a state of emergency at that time, which means that it would likely be regulated through some form of policy, provincial recommended policy.
Okay.
But you know, we don't, outside of the alternative voting bylaw, we don't have a current policy or bylaw that would define that. So it's possible that a bylaw would do it. I don't know that we have the power, the law, the legal authority to do bylaws in this area. I'd have to look at that. It's probably something that will come provincially and I'm not sure if it would be guidelines or whether it would be the law, right? So there, you know, there might be suggested, you know, keep 6 feet, which we've heard a million times, or it could be like, you can't go door to door, right? And I don't know how that's going to end up. It's a little early still. Certainly we have our returning officer hired. Certainly we're going to continue to train and do all the things that are needed for the returning officer to be successful. We've already asked the provincial for the provincial government for the most recent electoral list, but I find even they are a little bit behind because they didn't know until recently, right? So some of the training has to be changed, right? Because the training was supposed to be in person and now it's not, and there's all sorts of different adjustments there.
Yeah, under the current trend that we're under, things just may be fine, probably will be fine by then. It's just the unknown, like in with this whole thing, it's the unknown and don't know which direction things are going to go. But anyhow, we'll have to wait and see how that pans out in the next few months or so. Now I'll be quiet.
I'll pass this on to Alain. Alain, I know this is probably just guessing this, but if there was a COVID-19 or a second wave this fall, we'd probably go, wouldn't you think, by the medical act type of thing? If there was a second wave in the fall. Yeah,
I mean, I'm speculating, but I think,
yes,
yeah, if there was a medical issue, if things got worse and you know, Dr. Strang said, or the state of emergency was put in place again by the province, that could delay an election, potentially. I know the premier in his announcement that the election would continue left the window open to being reassessed in August, but you know, supported the decision, I guess, by Mr. Porter on the election continuing.
Thank you, Alain. Okay, any further questions or comments on, yes, Councillor LeBlanc.
Just checking how's my connection. You guys hear me all right?
Very good.
I feel like we may have sort of got off topic. I think as to Board of Muse's comments, I think we should assume that we have an election coming in the fall. However, in regards to the letter from Mayor Mood to the minister, should we discuss taking a position on that letter? Because I do generally share the concerns of that letter for a possible October election. So although, yes, we should prepare for one, I'm just wondering what my colleagues feel like if we should be discussing taking a position either with or, for or against the comments made by the NSFM. Any thoughts?
Great question, Councillor LeBlanc. Anybody would like to comment on that? Yes, Councillor Albright.
I just wanted to say that as I read through the NSFM, the letter that was kind of the rebuttal letter, there were a lot of points there that I agreed with. I kind of in the same boat as Councillor Donaldson. What if there's a second wave? They're saying there will be a second wave. The second wave rolls around September, October. I don't think people are going to have an election on their mind. I think it's probably the last thing that they'll be thinking about. And I think trying to push our way through door to door to campaign will not be viewed in a positive light. So I do agree with the letter that the NSFM, the rebuttal letter that they sent, and I would support their position and their arguments.
Thank you, Councillor Albright. Any other comments or on that?
Warden Muse.
Warden Muse.
So what would we do in order to support? Will we just send a letter to the same people that letter went to and indicate that we are in full support of what that letter is saying? Is that all we need to do? We don't have to write a letter again. The points are all there. It's just to make sure that they know that we as a municipality agree with what was in that letter, right? So basically, that's what we would have to do. Just a letter stating that we support, and probably there are other municipalities that have done the same thing. I'm not saying I know, but I would say that probably there are some municipalities with the meetings that we've had with NSFM on a weekly basis. I think there was a lot of concern from many municipalities about the election being held in October, that they didn't feel it was right to make a decision based on how they made their decision without any consultation or anything with the municipalities. And so anyway, I think perhaps there's going to be more municipalities that are going to be following up on that with their support. So I think we should do that, and I would put that as a motion that we show our support or indicate that we are in support of what that letter is saying.
Very
I'll
good.
second that.
You second that, Councillor LeBlanc. Councillor Donaldson, you had your hand. I don't know if you want to comment or.
Well, I was just going to say I agree totally with what Councillor Albright said, and yeah, the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities represents all municipalities. So I think just acknowledging their letter and we're in total agreement, and it's a great idea. So my right hand's ready to go anytime.
Very good. Laura, you've got that mover and seconder, have you? Great. Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand. All those against, left hand. Motion carried. Okay. On to the next item. Bear with me here. Okay, I'm getting there. Okay, in 6B, it's Kings Lake Estate Landscape and Sign feature. And I see here, there's two attachments. The first attachment is about that Garion Construction is looking to put a sign at their Kings Lake Estates. It's on Kings Lake, and they have residential camps going up there. They're selling lots, and they have a budget of $10,750 to cover the excavation, work prep the area, install a rock wall, which will be extended more, it says, than in the sketch, to the right to compensate for the slope. They're going to install posts with caps plus the custom sign. Then fill the inside with soil, plant shrubs and perennials. Finally, a cover of black mulch. I guess it says, could this be brought to council's attention if they would consider a contribution towards the cost? So I guess it's this must have come as a letter, CEO Muse, to your attention, I would presume, or to the warden.
Yeah, it was to staff's attention, and I did have a conversation with Ian on it, and I think there's no policy or process for this particular request. I think the logic is that it's a major development in the municipality, and that there was some interest from the developer to put some appropriate signage, and the owner of that, well, Garion's the owner of Garion is also aware of our other signage policies that we have. We have had some assistance on signs, both for community signs and also for marketing and promotion signage. We would have assisted on the Université Saint-Anne sign. I say Université Saint-Anne, it's sign regarding the Tusket Business Park. So it's not without precedent that we've done something like this. I just don't have any policy to support it at this time. I mean, the request is not entire. Like, I mean, I think the request is really acknowledging that there's a tax base there that might be interesting for the municipality to in some way support. So I don't. If you require additional information, I'm sure that he would be happy to provide it. I know he did also mention that he may want to develop some green space there, which would be community space. And that's also a possibility, but that's actually not part of this request. So that's what I know.
Thank you, Muse. Leave this to council to discuss. Any questions? Any further info or comments? Councillor Bork?
Yeah. Yes, they're developing, and it's going to be taxes for the municipality. But you said that we did help Université Saint-Anne to put. We contributed to signage there. Is that what I understood?
We contributed to multiple signs being added to the there's a sign that goes, you know, it's, I don't know what.
So that's at the Tusket Park.
Yeah, you got
Business
yeah.
Park. So that's our park.
That's correct.
That's what I'm getting at. It's our park that we help to put signs up to advertise what's in our park. So I mean, I think it's a great thing that he's doing here, but I don't know. I'm not really for maybe if we're going to start putting up signs for all businesses that go up. Well, we put one, we're going to have to put for another too. So that's my thought on that.
Would anybody else would like? Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, so last week I went to Quinnin for a ride to check out a couple land developments that are going on back there by, and most of you probably know Gary Bellevue has large lake lots and all kinds of new roads and development, and he had his own signage. It was, I believe, something through Develop Canada initiative. But I'm with Councillor Burke. I don't think we should be promoting other people's developments or businesses by helping them with their signage. I mean, they're aggressive developers. I'm sure they'll find ways to bring people to their house lots, camp lots, whatever they're selling and developing. So I don't think it's an area that we should be even looking at, frankly, my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Anybody else would like to weigh in on this matter? Councillor LeBlanc?
I'm going to go slightly different route. I very much agree with the points made about equality and fairness. I don't feel comfortable doing it for one and not for others. And definitely tonight wouldn't be the time to have this discussion, but maybe we can possibly, as time goes on, look at if this becomes a reoccurring theme, to maybe have a system in place as a general response, yes or no, or as a financial assistance to maybe aid developers with beautification of signage if they do, if this situation does happen again. So again, I think it'd be a bit unfair to do it for one and not another. I agree with that. However, I think there is validity in supporting such an initiative. I mean, if it's hard to ignore, if you look at the tax base of the homes that are being built in these development areas, I think in our best to support that in some way or another.
Okay, Councillor LeBlanc seems to be breaking up from my end. I don't know if the others are having the same problem. But we caught most of what you were saying, Councillor LeBlanc. Most of what you were saying, we did catch it. So, I guess it's, anybody else would like to weigh on, say anything on this? Yes, Warden Muse?
The signs that we have in our industrial park, does it advertise? I'm trying to visualize what's there, and that big sign, does it advertise the businesses in the park?
Yes. To those that were interested in doing so. Not all of them are on that on
Okay.
that sign.
But we did help. We did contribute towards that.
Yeah, it was a cost sharing project. So they paid a certain amount as well. I don't remember the breakdown.
So whether it's in our park or not, we still help businesses to advertise where they were, right? We did private
Yes.
business. Yes, we did. Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, that would be my, it is going to bring a lot of tax base. There's no doubt. The homes that are going in there are nice. I've been in, I've seen a few. But anyway, I can see we have to be careful when we start contributing towards private developments and developers, I guess. But anyway, I'm not sure that I'm ready to vote on this tonight or not. I think I'd like to think about it myself to see what it's. But I don't fully disagree with the request. I guess that's what I want to say.
Okay, CEO Muse, on the signage that was put up, like there were signs that all over the municipality that were put up on a project that we had. We did put that signage up. We paid for that, but those that have their names on those signs, the businesses, they had to pay into it, didn't they?
Yes. So in no circumstances did we ever support signage other than for our own signs that we didn't either cost share with the business or organize it or coordinate it on behalf of business. So one of the things about business, like the municipality of no municipality, in fact, can give direct incentives to businesses. But one of the things they can absolutely do is promote business. So the signage initiative that you see, the brown directional signage that you see, so we would have paid, I think it was over $10,000 at the time to erect the signs and the posts, right? So we spent a little bit more money than we thought we would, and I remember this being controversial because we were outside of budget. And so, but we did install it knowing that we'd want it there long term. And so the businesses pay $200, a certain amount of money per year for 10 years. And that's supposed to pay for everything, right? And so at the end of the day, I think we would end up with a nominal profit, if any. Like it was mostly a break-even project over the period of time. So we've done that. We've also done marketing. We've coordinated and done a lot of like doers and dreamers marketing, which is of course print marketing. We don't do that anymore. Yes, has taken any of that over, but we used to coordinate that for a bunch of businesses and said, look, we'll subsidize a little bit of it and we'll coordinate it and you guys will pay in. And, we ended up paying an amount, but it benefited everybody that was marketing. So the thing is there's very few ways that we can assist business. And this is absolutely one of the ways where we can legally do so. I'm not taking a position on whether you should or shouldn't. I'm just suggesting that from an MGA's perspective, you're quite limited in what you can do. This one is eligible. If council isn't sure what to do about this particular ask, may I suggest that your decision might be to develop a policy first before you can entertain a request. That way you're not in the position where you're entertaining one request. The one request informed you to create policy. That's a suggestion. Obviously you can reject it and be done with it. You can also do that. Or you can accept it, but if you accept it, I don't think there's any amount that's being requested right now. Like they're basically saying this is how much it costs. I don't think the expectation would be that the municipality would take on the entire cost. I don't know what the expectation would be around cost sharing.
Thank you, CEO Muse. From what I'm getting from everybody around, it doesn't seem there's any appetite to make a motion or anything to support this at the moment. So if, yes, Councillor Donaldson.
You might have spoke too quick. Hammond's Plains, we all know this big, beautiful subdivision development called Glen Arbor. Do we know if the municipality of Halifax, HRM, if they assisted in putting up that big, beautiful sign for that development? I mean, that would answer questions.
I don't have the answer to that specific question.
And there's a lot more examples like that. If you got something big and grand and beautiful you want to develop, part of that is beautiful signs and promotion and whatever. And I just don't see our position in doing that, because what about the low budget places that develop low budget housing? I mean, are we going to put up signs for them to get that developed? I mean, I'm just not comfortable with this in the direction that it could go. So I'm willing to make a motion that we would reject the contribution to this request.
Is there a seconder to that? And seconded by Councillor D'Entremont. Any further discussion? Councillor Albright.
I was just going to say that I was a little bit concerned because when I saw the request, there is no amount. It was just a matter of, can you help? And I really wasn't sure of the amount that they were requesting. And my other concern with it is, if we do, I understand what Warden Muse is saying about, it is going to bring income to us tax base wise, but does this mean that if we do it for this one, what about if we get, just like Councillor Donaldson said, low-income housing coming in and different developments? We have no policy in place, and that's what kind of scares me. So it's hard, because it's going to become yes to this one, yes to that one, no, and it's going to feel like we're cherry picking and we're deciding who gets money and who doesn't, and I'm not comfortable with that.
Very good, Councillor Albright. Councillor LeBlanc.
Yeah, just curious, can I get a clarification on the motion? I didn't quite get the motion.
Did anybody get? Go ahead.
The motion was to deny contribution to this letter, to this request that we received in this letter.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. I hadn't heard him. I couldn't get him clearly. Okay, we have a motion on the floor, and you all know the motion. You've all heard it. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Negative, raise your left hand. That motion is carried. Yes, Warden Muse, yes.
The reason I'm raising my hand as a negative on this one is because we had discussed that maybe we should at least look at a policy, and I think we're making a decision without that. That's the only reason that I'm voting against the motion at this point.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor LeBlanc, did you have anything? Did you want to add?
Voting nay as well.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc. Okay, the motion was carried. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, and I believe that this is going to be, it's the capital budget, and it either be CAO Muse or Marcia Dion, our financial director. Which one will it be? Okay, Alain, go ahead. You could unmute. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Gotcha.
You got me? Okay. I'm just pulling up the slides for the presentation. And then I will share my screen so that everybody can see it. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. It might help if I press share. Let me see now. How about now?
Very good.
All right, wonderful. So we're doing this for the first time. So what will happen is those that are watching on Facebook Live will see the screen and only the screen. They won't see you. Is that correct, Scott? I believe that's correct. Anyway, so I'll go through the presentations, very brief, but at the same time, it does give highlight of where our capital budget stands. So as you know, we passed our operating budget. Typically, we would pass our operating budget and our capital budget the same day. But because of COVID and other reasons, the capital budget was delayed, and we wanted to get the operating budget done quicker than usual, just so that we can get billing done, so we could start to learn what in fact our impact, or the community impact, is around COVID. So as we've discussed before, the one way to know whether taxation is going to be, and tax collection is going to be an issue, is to send the bills, and that's usually information that tells you whether people are ready to pay, or whether they're concerned about their cash flow. So this particular discussion has very little to do with the COVID impacts. This is existing capital budget projects that we have. So this year, and so as most of you are quite familiar, the capital budget has two bank accounts, or two streams of funds that it receives and manages. One is the federal the federal gas tax that we receive approximately $345,000 a year per year, and those funds are used for very specific purposes. So this year we had the last slide shows where our opening and closing balances are. So I won't talk about how much money we had in the bank, but I can say that we had money in the bank. So when I say that we're recommending an expenditure of 1.255 million, that's the biggest amount that we've spent in 1 year ever for a federal gas tax. And some of the expenditures that we have for gas tax, we've spent over time. Our other biggest amount would be the investment of the transfer station, which we cost shared with our two partners in Yarmouth County. So this is the biggest spend this year. $550,000 will be applied to our admin building project. That is not the end of the contribution to the admin project. So we are anticipating between $1.4 and $1.6 million of our federal gas tax will qualify and therefore be allocated to our new building. So why is it only $550 this year? Well, some of the expenditures are going to occur this year, and some of the expenditures will occur next year. That's one reason. The other reason is some of the gas tax will actually be used to pay down the debt that we will be getting on the project. So rather than spend the money on expenditures right away, it will be used over time to pay for debt that related entirely to expenses that were eligible for gas tax. So we will get to our 1.4 to 1.6. I believe the actual number is 1.6 and change. So that number will be spent on the admin building over the course of time. Okay, so this is the single biggest one. The other investments that we're proposing for federal gas tax investment, one is the final ComFit project that you've approved. So you've approved 3 projects independently. One was at Rock Road in West Pimlico. The second was at the fire station in West Pimlico. And the last one is the Wedgeport Fire Department solar installation. So in each of those cases, and we would have discussed this many times in the past, but not so much recently, will be an annual income that will be generated that will more than account for our investment. So we'll be providing some of the financial projections, the revised financial projections for Wedgeport. But in both West Pubnico 1 and West Pubnico 2 investments, we're expecting a solid return on our investment. So these are investments on gas tax that actually generate operating revenues for us. So we're expecting to spend $275,000 in the Wedgeport Fire Department installation. That is the entire cost. There's no year 1, year 2 that will be completed. So if we don't complete this year, obviously we won't spend that much, but that will be the total at the end of the day. The West Pubnico dewatering investment we have at $285,000. We need to find a replacement technology for our Rosie, which is going through a whole other issue that that probably would be more suited for an in-camera conversation. However, we are seeking an alternative dewatering solution, and we have found technology that we're satisfied with, so we need to go out to market to in order to meet our procurement obligations. But we are expecting that number to be approximately $285,000. Depending on the success of the RFP, could be less or more. Finally, we have put a trail improvement amount of $50,000. So I don't have that earmarked specifically for a location. What I do have is an active transportation strategy that you've approved that has recommended trail improvements, including signage improvements, but also infrastructure improvements. So in light of the tripling or quadrupling, or I don't know what the number is, in light of the increased trail use with COVID, it really confirms the importance of that asset in our community, and it impacts all of our communities, or at least most of them are either near or right on the rails to trails, which is where most of that money would be applied. So that's the breakdown of the federal gas tax. There is other capital investments utilizing our other fund, which is what I would call the regular capital reserve. The federal government requires us to show the gas tax separately, which is why I speak about them separately. But oftentimes what happens is the projects that we do are either funded by both places or even more than those two places. So under capital investments, we're expecting to spend $3.8 million this year, with $2.19 million of that being our admin building project. So that's not a surprise, I don't think, to anyone. So essentially, I took the remaining expenditures based on the budget, what I'm expecting to in terms of expenditures for the current year. Some of that is an estimate because that will be based on how quickly the contractor can do the work, right? So they'll bill based on they will bill us based on their percentage of completion. So there is some uncertainty around exactly how much that will be. However, we are also expecting some bridge financing, some short-term financing in the case where we are spending quite a bit of our reserves and finding ourselves in a situation where the cash might be a little tight. We will also, as part of this budget, be approaching our local institutions for a short-term loan until we can secure the $3 million borrowing that has been confirmed through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So what happens is it's only at the end of the project do you get the full amount from FCM. So if we require bridge financing, we will be getting that locally. We will use every amount of money that we have in our accounts because it's likely better to use our own than to borrow. But the option to borrow remains, and it's part of this budget. The other investments, the other amount of 3.8 sounds like a lot of money, and it is, but it's not necessarily our money that we're spending. So $1,040,000 of that is expected for the Wedgeport septic tank replacement project. That project is funded entirely by either the user, the owner of the property, or the federal provincial government, so that none of that money will come from your reserve. Okay, it flows through the reserve because it has to flow through something, but the purpose, the capital reserve will be used for short-term liquidity issues, because we have to spend the money to get the money from federal and provincial government. So so it will flow through the capital reserve, which actually really comes back to my point around having to borrow an amount of money for a short period of time in this year, where we'll be fronting a lot of projects. So this $1 million project, while it's not our money that is being invested, it is our money that is used to spend, only to be reimbursed later. So you can see there might be a cash flow issue with some of those expenses, depending on how quickly we can get the payments from the federal and provincial government. The other two amounts would be Eelbrook Fire Station and the ferry terminal project. The ferry terminal project, you as a council committed $400,000 towards the over $9 million project. So none of those payments have been requested from the town of Yarmouth as of yet. I'm expecting the first $200,000 this year. I actually expected it last year, but their project was delayed, therefore our contribution was. The same goes with the Eelbrook Fire Station. Last year I had expected the first installment of $100,000. However, their project has really not begun, so that was delayed a year. So you might notice this is the second time we talk about this. It's only because we budgeted for it last year and it didn't occur, so I'm budgeting for it again. It's likely that it will occur this year, but understand as well that in both of those cases, it's the first of two payments. So your commitment is 400 and 200. 400 for ferry, 200 for Eelbrook service, or Eelbrook station, sorry. Other investments include a small amount for the Hipson Bridge to set up the work, Tusket wastewater. There's some minor repairs there, fire ponds, which I mentioned earlier, and completing the road construction in Tusket. So the paving of the J.E. Hatfield Court, your newly minted named road, is included in this capital budget. So I've changed the page to talk about, well, before I get into that, are there any questions on the first item, the first page, or shall I continue?
Any questions on the first part of CEO Musa's presentation? I can just throw this in quickly. I find where it's on fire ponds. I brought this up a few years back about liability if it's a fire pond. We've got a situation in the Melrose Hill where the fire pond across from the fire hole with 3 or 4 children, young children that were around there the other day. I don't feel we are taking enough of a stand to fix this. It seems to be dragging quite a bit. And I know we spoke about this, but I don't feel the priority, Hipson Bridge or a fire pond where a safety issue is. I don't think this is being addressed, my opinion, of course. But anyhow, can this budget be worked on, Alain, or there's those numbers are pretty well steadfast to what you've got there?
Well, it certainly is your budget. I think the issue of the fire ponds, just to answer the question, will go up this year, absolutely. Anywhere where we consider to be a place where people might be playing inappropriately. The issue with fire ponds is a lot of the fire ponds are on private property. They're not for us to get engaged in. So there's that piece. There's also others that are owned by and managed by the fire departments themselves. So each fire hole has a story. And when we initially brought this topic up about 2 years ago, we set aside a budget of $25,000 thinking we could put fencing here and there and everywhere. But when we priced the fencing, it was over $200,000 on properties we don't own. And in certain instances, the municipal liability would be absolutely questionable. So so that's why I think we paused, because the information that had been provided initially and what we looked at after were two different things. So we did get a safety review done. That work has been completed. The report has been submitted to Public Works, and we will be initiating the signage first and foremost on the properties that are not privately owned, that are owned by fire departments. In the rare cases they might be. We will be talking directly with them and putting some measures, not all measures of safety that we had initially recommended. So that's the reason why it really delayed. And the fire ponds, we don't own them. It's not we don't own them, but we're in the position where we're ultimately responsible to deliver a service, which is a fire service. And we choose to deliver that through our departments. Some of our departments have raised this issue as a safety concern and have not the funds to deal with it, which is why we were interjecting. So your point is well taken, Deputy Warden. It has been delayed, probably, and really needs to get reinitiated, re-energized, for sure.
Thank you, Councillor. CAO Muse, that's, I like the clarification. Any questions, other questions anybody would have?
Yes, if I may say so. Can anyone hear me or?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was trying to speak when at first when you asked any questions, but I was muted. So, and I was just going to talk as well about the fire holes. Like, I honestly don't know what lands or who owns the land that some of them are on. But 10 minutes before the meeting this evening, I was out for a drive in a couple of the fire holes that's in my district here. We've got one up Franks Road. It's a beautiful fire hole, nice chain link fence all around it. But the chain link fence is being held up now by old rope because there's such a lien on the chain, on the fence. And also the one up Schmed de l'Eglise, it's all overgrown with alders and stuff like that. So I honestly feel as though we should make it a priority. Like, and again, I've said it before, I feel as though sometimes we ship money outside of our municipality. I'm looking back here at a couple of months ago where we shipped out in the vicinity of $100,000. If I would have known that we weren't going to be doing our fire holes, I would have not been voted in favor of that motion. But because we also had our solicitor tell us that these fire holes, that we may want to look at them and be careful with them. So I thank you, CAO Muse, for saying that it might be time to step it up a notch and get some work done around these holes. No matter whose responsibility it is, it's a great place for the firefighters at 2 o'clock in the morning, to obtain water if there's a bad fire going or whatever. Thank you.
And your Councillor Digdon, I can only see Warden Hughes and Councillor Digdon. So if there's any other questions, you may have to speak up because I can't see you, the other councillors. Okay, if not, CAO Muse, you could certainly move forward.
Yeah, and I will speak again on the fire ponds after it's done, because the amount of we've set aside will not solve the problems that I think that you're wanting to have solved. So we'll get absolute clarity about that.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So, just a second here. Here we go. So the administrative building is our major project in terms of organization and cash flow. And this is just, a lot of this is repetition of what I've already said. So I'll just blast through this quite fast. So the final construction costs are not expected to happen by March 31. They're expected to happen 90% or more by June 2021. There will be some form of holdback, obviously, and probably we'll get all of the some of the grant and potentially some of the grant revenue, but absolutely we would get all of the FCM grant and debt likely happening in next fiscal year, not this one. So again, this is talking about the cash flow issues that might be created by spending the money without getting the borrowing. So that's, I'm not going to say that again. So these are the projects that we expect to be completed this year, and as well as a description of what they might be. So the Wedgeport wastewater project, currently we expect to have it done. We were going to make a decision on the RFP for the engineer today. However, we've had a bit of a setback, so we'll have to defer that decision until we can address that particular setback. However, that should not significantly alter the project timing. We do have until the fall of 2022 if we need it to finish. And keep in mind that one, again, that's the one that's coming that we don't actually have any money earmarked for it. The Coeur J.E. Hatfield Court to be partially paved and power brought to the back lot. That will happen this spring, summer. And the signage for the fire pond safety, all the signage for the fire ponds will be erected this year, probably in the spring. And I am currently budgeting minor safety improvements. So if we're going to go a little bit more in depth, we're going to have to inject a bit more money in the budget for this year. The solar panel installation ought to be completed in the fall 2020. The East Pumlico water utility, there are major retrofit to the wells, electrical, pumps, plumbing, piping, all of which will happen on Willett Road, all of which are expected to happen this year and be completed. That one is conditional on funding. So we have two outstanding applications, one provincial and one federal, to support this work. If we do not get either one or only one of those fundings, it may alter the amount of work we do, but we will be doing work on East Pumlico wells this year. It's absolutely required. So the West Pumlico dewatering equipment, we're hoping to move forward on that, put out an RFP, get that successfully done, and then perhaps see it as early as the fall of 2020. I don't anticipate it could happen any quicker than that. So the projects underway or ongoing. So the Hipson Bridge, this has been a long-standing conversation we've had. We do have an application we're submitting to ACOA. It's not complete yet. There's some missing information before we can submit it. I don't know that ACOA will support the work or not. It depends on whether they see the bridge as something unique. It is not something they typically fund unless, of course, we would be successful in explaining it as part of the trail system, and they have funded trail systems in the past. So the quicker we could get funding support, the quicker we could do this work. Right now, with all the money, with all the projects that we have underway, I also have the concern that we may not have the appropriate human resources to manage this project with all the other projects that we're putting up. So it's a question of priority. Again, this is for you for discussion. So if you disagree with priorities, then this is the place to do it. The contributions of 200 and 100 to Ferry and Eelbrook, I've already mentioned that. Fire safety will require a second phase. I mean, particularly the project as described or as set up. We don't have a lot of money this year set up for the fire safety piece. If we're going to go, if we're going to go hard at these, then the project that project could actually be finished this year, but it would need more money in order to be finished this year. So, and the trail improvements are multi-year. So those I think you could literally invest every year an amount of money in the trails. And recognizing that we have a nonprofit organization that gets funding and that does the work on trails, we give them $4,000 or $5,000 a year. If we are looking at major improvements or retrofits to certain sections, it's going to take more than $4,000 to $5,000 to invest. So I'll stop there and ask if there's any questions at that place.
Anybody have any questions? I can see Danny, Kathy, Glenn. Yeah, but I can't see the others, so speak up. If not, CEO Muse, you can keep on.
Okay, so the project's not including in this funding year. So any funding to do any sort of request for YMCA capital retrofit is not in the budget. There is no money for the Mariner Center major expansion. There is money in the operating fund for a smaller capital project, but that's much smaller. We're not, like, the major expansion is not on the budget. The Tuscan Track and Field, there's no amount earmarked for that project at this time. We don't have any additional funds or funding for that at this time. I suspect that if we got word that there's going to be funding opportunities, that one, may surface in terms of attention. So the Hipson Bridge construction, so there's work. We've set aside about $15,000 to set up the work, but there is no construction work included in this capital project year. Maybe, that I think would be one that we would look at next year. East Pimlico water tank, so that has been a project that we have put on your, excuse me, that we've brought to your attention as one that's approaching end of life. In discussing the priority of work on the East Pimlico water tank with the customers, and which has been confirmed by our staff, is that that's not the first thing we need to work on. The first thing we need to work on is the project that you have included in this year's budget. That way, the results of that first project will inform how much or how big a tank needs to be, or what we need to do with the existing tank. West Pimlico repairs to red cap manhole and smoke detection. Those are included in the operations for West Pimlico Sewer. They are not in your capital budget. They are included in the operating budget. Rural broadband, we're expecting payments in next year, even if you've made a commitment to invest in rural broadband. I don't expect that the amount will be requested in the next 12 months. And finally, there was a project that had been raised in the 5-year capital investment plan that referred to the potential expansion of users on the Dennis Point wastewater system. That is the commercial section of Dennis Point. So that is not included in this funding year. We actually don't know what that project looks like. We just, it made the list a few years back, and it's not been one that we've discussed recently. But I didn't want to lose it because it was on the capital investment plan, the 5-year plan. Any questions there? Moving on.
Councilor Digdon?
Thank you. So I'm not 100% correct, CAO Muse, but the red cap, the manhole, it is going to be fixed this year, but it's included in the operations for the West Pimlico Sewer surplus. Am I correct in that?
Correct. You are correct. Which is
okay.
Not included in this discussion because it's in another budget.
Okay. Thank you very much.
We are doing that work.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Any other questions that you may have? You could speak up, those that I can't see. If not, CAO Muse, you can certainly carry on.
Okay, last slide. So this basically gives you a high-level understanding of the amount of money that we had starting and finishing. It's so it gives you a picture. Okay, well, we just talked about all these projects, but if they happen exactly the way that we said it was going to happen, this is what will happen to the fund balances. So we had $3.1 million in the capital fund. We expect the closing balance to be $600,000 lower than that this year, 2.518. It is now that assumes a short-term temporary borrowing of 1.5 million. If we don't get that borrowing, that number will be $1.5 million less, and that may be okay. I'm just making sure that our cash flow is not causing any problems. So I'm anticipating bridge financing. I may need all of it. I may not need any of it. So what this what this capital fund assumes is that I will go out for 1.5. So I have already received that authority from you because you have signed a temporary borrowing resolution for 3 million. So what would happen is the temporary borrowing would come in, and then when you got the full 3 million, the 1.5 would be paid, right? So it would be short term, okay? We are expecting 135,000 to come in from operations, and that's the only income we're expecting to come in from operations. Any other income coming in would come from federal, provincial government grants that I've talked about. So those projects that have been supported with those monies. So the closing balance will be 2.5, but what will happen is it will be replenished once we borrow the full 3 million. So that number will go down and then we'll come back up. It won't come back, and so we'll have a better idea what that looks like in June of 2021. I'll have a much better idea as the project unfolds, and I'll make sure to inform you of any cash flow issues that may occur. So the federal gas tax fund, the opening balance is 1.52 million. That's what we had at the end of March of 2020. And we're expecting a closing balance of 625. So we're going to spend 1.2, we get 345. If you do the math, that usually works out to 625. So again, I'm putting below that rural broadband, recreation projects, and other wastewater projects are projected to be paid from here in future years. So that's just a reminder that that fund gets replenished by approximately $345,000 a year, every year. So, and there's no indication that that will change anytime soon. So that is a description of the types of projects we're looking at. I'm going to stop the sharing of the screen. And so there's one of two things we can do here. There's also the capital budget that is attached. Oops, there we go. We also have a capital budget attached that shows the details of how much, sorry about that, how much money we're investing in each project. So I guess the commentary that I've received from council is that the fire ponds really is, at least the fire ponds anyway, is one that you really want staff to step up and invest a bit more money in. So I'll stop there, and maybe there'll be a discussion around that. And what I can do is, while you're having a discussion, I could probably share the screen on the capital budget, which is the actual detail, if that's what you wish.
So what is the wish of council? Any comments, discussion on what CAOMU's has brought about on the capital budget, or other items like the ponds? Or go ahead, Councillor Dignan.
Thank you. I personally would like to see a little bit more money spent on the ponds. I feel as though we've been talking about it for the last 3 years, and that's about all we've done, is talk about it. I'm just scared at some point in time, something bad may happen, and we'll have all sat around and say, well, we wish we would have done it sooner. And I don't say, you know, I would say, if there's already been an assessment done of the ponds, go with the worst ponds around the municipality and start some work on them first. And where that rope is on that pond, on that fence over on Franks Road, like, I'd gladly donate cable, and so it won't be sunburnt rope that's holding up that fence. But there has to be something done. We have to make a move and start doing it, I'd say, my own personal opinion.
Warden Muse.
Yeah, I guess mine wasn't on the ponds. I was just going to ask a question about when we're talking about the money for the building. When we first started this, we kept saying we had the money to pay for the building, right? Is that money that we're talking about in this totals that you showed us? It's there. Okay, yes. It's not earmarked or a specific account somewhere that says this is a building fund money? Because at first we had said there probably wouldn't be any borrowing, but then we got this great deal that we could borrow, and what we had said was that we could borrow the money, keep the money in the account, and the interest on the account would be more than what we pay for the interest if we on the loan. So that's still the case. Like we're going to be paying the loan from our reserves. Is that I'm not sure how that's going to work.
Right. Okay. So certainly we've talked about the many ways that we can finance this. The first things first, the money is in the reserve to pay if that was the choice we made. Now, the choice was altered when we did the FCM application.
Right.
So when we did the FCM application, there's two components to that. One is the loan, which is a little over $3 million, but the other is a grant.
Mm-hmm.
And the grant is 450 I think it's 440 and change $1,000. So it's a package deal. So you don't get one without the other. So that changed the way that we were going to pay for it, because we're never going to walk away from $450,000.
No.
So the interest rate is competitive. I can't confirm yet what that rate will be. The rate may exceed the amount of money that we would otherwise be able to make in our bank account. It may exceed that number. However, the difference is the $450,000 grant more than offsets any sort of difference that might be. So the idea is that we would pay the loan with the capital reserve money we set aside for that very purpose.
Right. That's what I had on
it from the reserve all at once. The principal and interest payments would be made by the capital reserve over time.
Okay.
None of that money will come from operations. Zero.
Right. And that's why, that's the way I had understood it at first. And then I wasn't sure if that was still the case, because like we said all along that taxes would never be raised due to us building a new building. I'm not saying we're not going to raise taxes, but it would never be, the reason being that the new building would never cause the tax rate to go up, because we do have the money in reserve to pay for that if we have to.
Yeah, and I said those words, and previous council said those words, and I'm going to tell you that the words are entirely true, and they continue to be true.
Right.
No tax increase is going to be based directly for this project. Now, nobody ever said there would never be a tax increase, because that's unrealistic to think that with the costs escalating over time, we all have escalating costs in the household, that there might be other reasons why. In fact, I would argue, as a passionate person for this project, I would argue that the net zero decision you've made and supported as a council is actually protecting the taxpayers' money more than anything else. It's that the savings in electricity bills is going to exceed $3 million over the life of the asset.
Right.
There's no, that's just an incredible feat. Now that's projected, right? But even if it was 2.5, it's still an amazing number. Mm-hmm. So certainly, I think that I could understand why there would be some fear around the potential of taxes rising because of this. I will say as well that we received a $97,000 grant that we didn't expect. So that's another piece that's reducing the overall cost over time.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to make sure that was still the case. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the budget? Anna, we should pass that capital budget?
Well, yes, with potential amendments, right? So I'm sharing the screen now. I think.
Oh, thank you. Go ahead. Yes.
So there's a lot of different ways that we've presented the information, but the item I want to highlight is the fire pond safety restoration of 12.5. That doesn't build a lot of that doesn't build a lot of new fences. Fencing is extraordinarily expensive. That would be on the low end in terms of investment. And I knew that coming in, and I knew we'd have a discussion about it. So you saw the slide on capital reserve and how much money would remain. So there is funding, additional funding available for this project, if that is the interest of this council, to increase the amount. We had an initial budget of 25,000. If we're going to do 100% of the repairs, that's not going to come anywhere close. So, you know, there has been a lot of planning around these projects, but in terms of executing any improvements to them, nothing has been done in terms of the actual spending of money to make a change to the safety issues that may or may not be there. So I would just want to remind council that we don't own these fire ponds, nor do we have a direct responsibility to do what you're proposing. I think that if we do have safety issues, and they are community issues, you have every right and every opportunity to increase funding to either to the fire departments for them to do it themselves, or for us to do them as a collective project. You're absolutely in the right to do that, even if we don't necessarily own the properties in question. So signage at the very minimum could be done even on private property. That's not an invasion of privacy in any way, and actually extremely inexpensive. So probably shouldn't even make that an issue, because we would probably do that no matter what. But there are some definite issues with the existing fire ponds and we will address the ones that don't have any ownership issues. We are happy to do those for sure. The others are a little bit more complicated, but we're willing to do something there.
I know that according to our bylaws, I was talking to John Sullivan, and he said that the ones that we do own, yes, we are liable and responsible. Do you have a determination of which ones they are?
I don't have that information with you here today. So
okay.
we do have an indirect ownership of some. We have direct ownership of some. So the ownership is all over the map. But we would absolutely focus on the ones that were either owned by us or owned by the fire departments. Those would be our priority. But I don't know that we would do as thorough of a job as was initially recommended, because the cost of that is exuberant, like it's like through the roof. Which I guess, and just to give you an example of what I mean by that is you know, the recommendation was to put fencing all around the pond, right? Well, there may be an alternate way to increase the safety around some of those. We do have the assessment of the safety issues on every property. We just have not executed the plan of action because of the costs issue.
Okay, any other comments on the fire ponds?
Yes, may I?
Go ahead. Yes, thank you, Lucia.
There's one, it's not in my district exactly. It's on the corner of the Martins Road in Juniors District and Highway 334. The pond itself is just maybe a couple feet, several feet from the pavement itself on the corner. So if there's ever any ice as someone's turning into the Martins Road, it's an extremely, extremely dangerous one. And I've received calls as recent as of this week. So I fully understand what our CEO is saying. If we're going to do the full job, obviously there has to be some budget tinkering done. However, I'm sure some of them are more dangerous than others, and I'm still receiving calls quite frequently about this one on the Martins Road. I'd like to see it, you know, and it's actually not, this one wouldn't even be so much an issue of encircling the whole thing with fencing. Even a guardrail on the front would do. So I'm extremely concerned about this one. Yeah. I'd like to see it amended quite soon if possible.
Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc. Yes, Councillor Digdon.
Thank you. Well, looking at the money that we've budgeted for, and the surplus that we're looking at, I would like to double that 12.5 to 25. Start working on our most serious, most dangerous ponds first, and go from there. And if it takes us 2 or 3 years to get the ponds back in shape, so be it. And go. Maybe we don't need all the fencing that I looked at this evening was in great shape itself, other than it needs some stakes put in possibly to secure the fencing and stuff like that. So it may be cheaper than what we thought at first anyway. So if we can, I'd like to take that 12.5 up to 25 and start working on our most dangerous ones first, and in the municipality. And I don't know if a motion would be in order there, CAO Muse, or not.
Well, I think we can, Councillor Digdon, and so first of all, thank you for that. And I'm always a little conservative when it comes to these projects, not knowing fully what your intentions are as council. So, I mean, I would say that you could go to 50. I mean, and I think that, so I'm taking your point and I'm saying, well, if we're gonna do this, we can probably go more than double the 12.5 and probably get a little bit more done this year. Now that, you know, I think we have a better idea of what we're looking at. And in terms of whether it's requiring a motion, I think the motion would be to approve the capital reserve budget as amended. And as long as the amendment is showing and clear, then you could make it all one motion, assuming it was the only change.
Okay, well, is a motion in order there now for the budget?
Yes.
Okay, I would like to amend the 12.5 for fire pond safety restoration up to 50,000, and move the budget as amended.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Kathy. Any more discussion? If not, raise your right hand for approval. Those against, left hand. Motion carried. Thank you, Ala. Does that cover our, does that cover what you wanted on that motion? We've approved the reserve.
Yeah, we approved the capital budget as amended,
As
and
amended.
make sure the Public Works understands that the fire ponds is a high priority of councils, and so that will probably bump others in terms of timing.
Sure. Thank you very much for that. Okay, we'll move on to 6Z, property tax loan policy. We have an attachment with 9 pages. And CEO Muse, seeing you're on a roll, why don't we get you to to explain us that part of the property tax financing program policy.
Yeah, okay, well, I won't share the screen on this one because it's a lot of legal wording, but I will just say that you've seen this before. And what it is a policy. So first of all, this has received legal review, and so and obviously if he didn't approve it, you wouldn't see it. So the authority is sections 111, 112, 130, 13 of the MGA. And the purpose of the policy is to allow for residential owners, including those that own a residential property that is rented to tenants, as well as commercial properties. And there's all sorts of commercial properties that would qualify. It allows them to apply for a tax payment program. So what that means is assuming that this is at the interest of council, that the commercial and residential taxpayers that have been impacted by COVID, and there are indications in the policy as to what that might look like, which we can talk about, they would qualify for a tax payment that would see them pay $25 per month for 5 months. I think the initial policy said 6 months, but we're saying 5 months now. And then and starting in August of 2020, they would pay their first amount of $25. And that would go on for 5 months. And then at that point, they'd have a payment plan that would take their total amount owing and divide it by, I believe it's 21 months, or let me just double check. Let me double check that. Sorry, 20 months. So they'd have the remaining balance divided by 20 months. Initially, we had 24. So that's a slight change as well from the original. And they would be able to pay equal installments until they repaid their 2020 taxes in 20 months from now. And the interest rate would be 1.3%. So associated with this tax program is an application to the provincial government to borrow an amount of money in anticipation that some of these tax payments will be deferred or delayed. So we will be paid via a loan from the province, and we will apply that money, we will apply that loan to those that need it, that qualify. So the qualifications are a little bit different across Nova Scotia. Most of them qualify, some of them don't want any part of this, okay? So that's happening in a small amount of municipalities. That is happening. In most municipalities, they're taking an approach that at least commercial, if not commercial and residential, will be eligible for this program. The eligibility criteria is slightly different in different places. Ours says if you're renting and your income has gone down by 20% or more in March, April, or May compared to January of the same year, you qualify. If you've received any sort of COVID support, federal, provincial, any sort of COVID support, you qualify for this tax payment program. Now that is both as commercial and as residential. So if you've gotten commercial assistance, you qualify. If you've gotten residential CERB, you qualify for this deferral. So it's a tax payment program, which means their taxes would not be in arrears unless they stopped paying. And as soon as they stop paying, that becomes a problem because then it will become all payable. So it's in the interest of the resident and commercial to obviously not miss a payment. So the program is designed to help those that may need a little bit of cash flow help in this time. So the eligibility criteria for commercial would be that they would have to prove that in any of the March, April, May months of this year, that they had a 30% decrease in, 25% decrease in revenue from last year at this time. So if they could prove that they lost 25% or more in any of those 3 months from this year to last year, they would qualify. Again, it might be easier for them to just simply submit the fact that they had some form of COVID support and they'd be in. So the application system, we have paper application and we have online. Online application is almost ready to go. It was done provincially, so every municipality could use the same online application form. The application form comes to myself for approval. We did add an appeal piece in case somebody got denied and they didn't like the answer. They can appeal to our Director of Finance, and that appeal would have to be done within 14 days, and there would be a deeper analysis of whether or not they ought to qualify. Because of the eligibility requirements are quite broad, there's quite a few things that they that would put them in the qualification list. I don't anticipate a lot of rejections and appeals. I think that it's either obvious that you qualify or it isn't. Well, it's either obvious you qualify or it's obvious you don't, I should say. So obviously with any sort of policy, there's some imperfections included, and we'll only see those when the applications start to come in. And I think that's probably the extent of the explanation. I will just quickly tell council why we changed some of the numbers. Like, so it was $25 for 6 months. We were initially starting them in July, but we felt like that was really too quick. So we extended the deadline of the policy to July 31st rather than it being in June. So it gives people more time to apply. And so what we did was we cut off this $25 a month from 6 to 5. And we also reduced the amount of payments from 24 months to 20 months. For the biggest reason why we did that is that 24 months is a long time to pay off an old tax bill. So trying to find the balance between helping the resident pay at a time of difficulty, but at the same time not making it so long that they're always behind, right? So we're trying to, the policy attempts to create a certain level of discipline. And so 20 months appeared to be a more reasonable number, at least to me, and which is why I made the change. Obviously, if council disagrees, it can choose the number of its choosing. It's your policy. Most have gone with the 24, some have gone with 12. In fact, one of our neighboring municipalities, I believe, went with 12 months. You're gonna pay back in 12. So it's a matter of how lenient or aggressive, assertive you want to be with this policy and as a council. So that would be the end of my explanation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I would like the warden to step up here. I should have known this. I kind of slipped my mind, but I'm in a conflict on this one. So I apologize for that, everybody. Warden, would you mind to continue the conversation and get into the vote and everything, if you wouldn't mind?
I will. Okay, any questions for the CEO on this topic? Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, I was just thinking, the 12-month, to me, that sounds better because you're gonna have next year's tax bill coming out, and these people will be expected to pay full next year, we hope, when their tax bill comes out, and they'll still be dragging another year of their previous bill with them on payments. So I can see the logic in going with 12 months because it's going to be pretty well paid off before their next bill is due next year, is what I'm thinking.
From a staff perspective, I hear what you're saying. We can pick, my personal perspective is 12 might be a little aggressive in terms of repayment. It may just deter people from actually taking advantage of this opportunity. But really, there's no way to know for sure which number will work best. And obviously, it's going to be different depending on the person in question. So I think it's good to have the discussion to land on a number, and we're happy to execute any number you choose.
Any other comments or questions? My question is, okay, they have 20 months to pay, but if for any reason halfway through they decide, oh, you know, I can afford more, that can be paid off at any time. They're
Yes,
not
it can.
stuck to paying for 20 months. It's not a contract that you're going to pay. They have that much to pay, but they can pay it sooner if they want to.
That is correct. And not only that, but whatever money we borrow from the province, we also have the ability to make more aggressive payments.
Same. Yeah.
So we have that flexibility as well.
Right. Yeah.
And we would, right? If people were paying more aggressively, we would pay it more aggressively.
Yes. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Donaldson.
Yes, this is not to do with businesses, but for individuals. So, does that mean like a husband and wife, like if one is still working and the other one has gotten government assistance due to COVID, do they qualify, or does it just have to be one?
The policy doesn't state that both have to have COVID-related issues. If both are on the deed and one had a COVID issue or had COVID support, the property would qualify.
Yeah, I see a problem with that too, because you might have a relatively high earner in the house and somebody that was working a minimum wage job that lost it, and all of a sudden is getting a $500 a week government package because of COVID, makes them qualify for this program that we have there. I don't see the fairness in a situation like that to their neighbor, that the person, maybe two people working on minimum wage, just getting by, still have to pay their taxes on the due date of July 31st. So I can see some problems and a lot of loopholes coming in this, but we agreed to do something, and this is basically what the province is approved across the board of something like this. So I mean, we're going to go with it. I agree with it, but I can see that there's going to be issues that we hadn't really thought about that much.
Okay.
Well, the example that you have shared with us could absolutely occur, where somebody would be high income earner and somebody getting a CERB qualification, because the CERB qualification does not seek to look at the family income. It seeks to look at that particular individual in the qualification. So yes, your hypothetical example could absolutely happen, and you know, this policy would not be able to fix that. We would basically allow for the first example to get the money that they've requested.
Yes.
It's yeah, it has as I stated, it has imperfections. It's not designed to be 100% all inclusive. It is certainly designed to try to assist those that to the best of our knowledge need it the most.
Anybody else? I have a question regarding the policy. Is this a municipality of Argyle policy? Is this a provincial policy? Was a policy out there? Anybody who wanted to take part in this program? Is this the policy that's a province-wide? I mean, I know there can be changes, like you said. Some could ask for a 12-month payback. Some could ask. Some don't want to. But is there, like the qualifications, for instance? Is that a provincial policy that's come through, that everybody will have the same qualifications?
It is a model policy developed by NSFM and AMA, not the province.
Right.
But it is definitely the guts of what you're looking at is the guts of every policy across the province if they choose to implement it. So to your point, there might be some differences, but the guts of it come from that model policy. And
I guess that was my question. You know, I thought that's the way we had talked about, that it should be at least kind of across the board. The basics should be across the board, so that everybody kind of uses the same thing. But each municipality would have their own decision to make on what they would do with certain items of it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know I thought the same thing. I mean, I know some people who are probably they're probably getting as much not working as they were working because they were laid off, because the not EI, but the CERT or whatever, one of the programs gave everybody across the board, where normally if they had been applying for EI, it would have been a lot less for some people who are only working at minimum wage and whatever. It's based on your salary. And I would hope that the people that you referred to, Councillor Donaldson, it can happen. But I would think that if anybody can pay their taxes, I can't see why they would want to make a payment and pay interest on it if they can pay before. But there's always people out there that will take advantage of that, for sure. So we need a motion on this. Councillor Donaldson.
Yes, after expressing my concerns, I'm willing to make that motion. I believe for the most part, it's a great program, and like I just wanted to point out, there will be a few problems, but it's a great policy to have, and for what's going on now, and so that's the motion.
We have a seconder on that. Okay, I see two hands. I'll pick one. Did you see the hands, Laurie? Did you pick one? It's been, I hate to play favoritism. But anyway, it's been moved and seconded. And no matter what, and my comment would be no matter what program you have, if there's any way for anybody to abuse it, there's going to be people that will abuse it. No matter what it is, you know. And I guess we bring this and we're going to hope that the people that do use it are the people that actually have to use it, you know. So anyway, so there's a motion on the floor. Any other discussion? Yes, CAO?
I don't want to leave the impression for those watching that this like abuse, the reference is going to cost the rest of the taxpayers any money.
No.
So the thing about it is we're going to be borrowing at 1.1 and we're going to be charging 1.3. Okay. There's a reason why the number isn't exactly the same. It's because we're going to be borrowing in advance of actually the applications coming in. So there'll be a period of time where we will have to pay a little bit of interest without actually collecting interest of our own. But at the end of the day, I expect the interest collected is going to exceed the interest. So for those that qualify for this tax plan and are playing the system, I guess, for lack of another way of actually expressing it, is that it's not costing the taxpayers anything by doing so. You know, the interest cost is being pushed down by the province, and we are in fact pushing that interest cost to those that qualify. So I just want to be clear on that. Is it perfect? No. Is it going to be fair to everyone? No. Does it seek to help those that are impacted by COVID? Yes. And do those abusers or potential abusers to the system, will it hurt the other taxpayers? My strong opinion based on the nature of how it's set up, no, it will not. So I just want to make it clear that, you know, it's one thing to qualify for something you don't and then have it cost somebody else, right? That's the piece I really don't, I don't want the message to go out that it would in any way cost the taxpayers.
Because everybody's going to have to pay their taxes. I'm sorry, go ahead, Councillor.
Correct.
That's exactly what I was going to say. At the end of the day, either you pay now or pay later, you're going to have to pay. So, you know, there may be some abuse or whatever word you want to use out there, but at the end of the day, you know, you're going to have to pay your taxes. End of story. So
exactly, which is what I was going to say there, because it's an abusive system, but if you abuse it, it's costing you more than if you paid your taxes up front, right? In the long run, because it's not a grant. So any other comments? If not, we need a motion on, oh, there is a motion. We need a seconded. If there's no other questions, if we're ready for the question, all in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Contraminded? Carried. The next item is we're not going to discuss, it's a wastewater improvement. And we've said that we wouldn't discuss that tonight due to things that come up. So now we move on to correspondence, municipal affairs and housing. Anybody have any comments or questions on that one? That was sent by Councillor or Warden Leland Anthony. Waste collection, COVID-19 numbers. Some information. That was some of the questions that were asked by me, whether or not that had increased the amount of garbage that was being collected, especially on the big garbage day, whether there was more. And I said, I don't know. There's no way that I would know that.
We don't have the spring collection information just yet, but what I can confirm is that the cost of garbage is shifted from commercial to residential, right? With businesses closing, they're not generating the waste, but waste is still being generated.
Mm-hmm.
And so the waste is being generated at people's homes. And how does that get paid? It gets paid with municipal taxes, whereas commercial waste is typically paid for by the commercial business. So it's shifting the burden of cost of waste from commercial to residential. And so that's what that's saying.
Yes.
So I expect our numbers on waste, not collection, but on tipping fees to be, maybe even exceeding budget this year for that purpose, for that reason. Maybe, but we don't know yet. It's too early.
See, our chairman is back, our deputy warden. So if you want to take it over, we're in correspondence and we're at number C. Thank
you, Warden Hughes, for taking over. On the waste collection side, Alain, you know what? On my part, although I'm the chair, you're absolutely right. I didn't pick that up, but it shifts totally to the municipality, as the commercials are not generating as much. So the burden does lie on it's going to cost us more money. Great point. Great point. It's going to be quite high, according to your perspective, right?
Yeah, it could be.
Very good. Okay, we'll go to 7C, Western Counties Regional Library Minutes. Have that at your reading pleasure. Financial request, number 8. District Community Grant, Mr. By the Westport.
I believe Councillor Digdon may have his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Digdon. Go ahead.
All right, I was just going to go back at the 7A for a minute as far as that letter that was wrote, I believe, by Mr. Leland Anthony, the warden for the municipality of District of Yarmouth, concerning possibly consolidation in Yarmouth County. I believe we voted no for that, a unanimous no. I don't believe we've instructed anyone to go out and write letters on our behalf or anything like that as far as going back into any talks at any time about consolidation. And I feel as though it would be up to the council, the municipality of Argyle Council, to make that move if we wanted to and to let the others know. So I know people have been wondering if this was just something when we voted no, just to put it off for a couple of months and then we'd be back at it or not. But I don't believe that was the case as far as I was concerned. And I still, myself, I'm under the opinion and listening to the people that they'd like us to remain the municipality of Argyle. So I just wanted to put that out because I never knew this letter went out or nothing like that. And then we got CC'd on it and it came as news to me, really.
Yes, Councillor Digdon, I see what you're saying. Certainly wasn't approved by you know, by our council, that's for sure. I guess it's just, Alain, well, I would think that Alain, the warden just wrote a letter from on his behalf or his council's behalf. Well, this letter comes from Mr. Porter, the minister, in response to Mr. Anthony, to Warden Anthony's letter. But I mean, we had no part in that, right?
No, we didn't. And so while the municipality of Argyle has independent decision making around this, so too does the municipality of Yarmouth. So what they did when they rejected the proposal for consolidation, their rejection was more not now. Ours was more no. So as a consequence of that decision, I think they subsequently passed a motion in that same meeting to reach out to the department and say, look, we're not ready to do this. There might be a time where we might be ready to do this. Can you help us out? So I think the why we were copying on the letter is because the discussion had to do with consolidation of 3. However, you know, the discussion of consolidation of 2 is still potentially on the table. And so I think that's why the municipality of Yarmouth wrote to that effect. So, you know, I don't think, and I know that the letter wasn't trying to re-engage Argyle in a discussion around consolidation. I think it was just a response from the municipality of Yarmouth saying what they said is no for now, but we'd like more information because we want to go to our people, and which they have absolutely every right to.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll keep on to, okay, Lucien, Councilor LeBlanc, you want to go ahead with the request, financial request?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the first grant of $500.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your right hand.
All right.
Mind of your left hand. Okay, motion carried.
And
Yes.
Chairman Surratt,
Yes,
I've got to excuse myself there. I guess I've got a date with a lobster boat here soon. I got to go fishing, so we'll see you later.
enjoy your day.
That's not an excuse.
Councilor LeBlanc. There's a community grant request, Pubnico and Area Garden Club.
Yeah, I'll take that one. I'd like to make a motion that we give $500 to the Pubnico and Area Garden Club.
Seconder to that. Seconded by Warden Muse. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Negative minded left. Motion carried. Next is the community grant, Les Amis du Musée.
Mine again, I guess. I'd like to make a motion that we donate $500, give $500 to Les Amis du Musée.
Be a seconder to that. Seconded by Councilor Bork. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Negative minded left. Motion carried. Under 8D, we have district community grant, la Société historique acadienne de Pubnico West. Dr. Digdon?
Like they used to say, I sound like a broken record, I guess. But again, I'd like to make a motion that we give $500 to la Société historique acadienne de Pubnico West.
Maybe a seconder. Seconded by Councilor Bork. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Right nay, left hand. Motion carried. Okay, we have a district community grant, Comité du 250e anniversaire. This one would be from Bridgeport.
That was Lucien, yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. Which
Right.
one's that? E?
That's the Comité du 250e anniversaire.
Yeah, sure. I'll make the motion to approve $500.
Good seconder, seconded by Councilor Digdon. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Very minded, left hand. Motion carried. We have number on F, District Community Grant, $500, Village Friends. Councilor Albright.
Sorry, so moved.
So moved by Councilor.
$500.
Yeah, seconder. Councilor Donaldson. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Contrary minded, left. Motion carried. Under G, could somebody do that for me? Clibacadien, $500.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Albright, seconder. Seconded by Councillor Bork. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Negative minded, left. Motion carried. Then we have New Horizons.
I'll make the motion.
Councillor Bork, seconded by Councillor Digdon. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Contrary minded, left hand. Motion carried. Okay, next, any topics for the next meeting or motion by council?
We
Councillor Digdon.
have Councillor Dignan with his hand up.
Yes.
The only thing I'm seeing, and it's 100% my fault, Lori asked me for them, the actual request. I do have them here for the 3 that I gave out, or that we gave out in my area here this evening. Lori sent me an email for them, and I forgot to get them back to her. So I'll man up to it. It's my fault, and I know I'll take it. Yeah, sorry, Lori. I'll get them to you.
Good man, nothing wrong with that. Okay, notice of motion or from councillors or topics for next meeting. Councillor LeBlanc?
Yeah, so Councillor Murphy, I believe, had an issue with connecting to the meeting this evening. So I received a message, and the message only came to me after the approval of the agenda. So I'll give you the topic very quickly, and then maybe you can let me know what's appropriate, how to deal with this. Councillor Murphy, I believe, asked me that he would like council to send a letter to the Department of Transportation about a new couple who just moved in with a small child on the West Hill Road, I believe in Cummels Hill, hoping they could put a speed limit sign or a kids at play sign. So I think what Councillor Murphy is looking for is a letter on our behalf. Apparently there's no signage in the area, and it's a high traffic area with safety issues. So I felt this was the most appropriate area to bring it up for him in the meeting, but I do understand if we need to wait till next meeting, so be it.
CAO Muse, is that appropriate at this moment? Could we make, if he makes that motion? Does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have it. It's not inappropriate. I mean, to the point where it's not like we're not spending money. We're asking somebody to do something that is outside our purview anyway. So yeah, I mean, no question that it's not a significant issue from our perspective.
So I'll make that a motion then. If maybe staff could discuss with Councillor Murphy more closely what type of letter he wants to send, what he wants to say exactly. But I believe a children at play sign is what he's looking for exactly. So I'll make the motion. The municipality of Argyle send a letter to TIR on that topic.
Seconded by Councillor Bork.
So just on that motion, so if it's a speed limit, it would be the responsibility of TIR. If it's a children at play, it could be our responsibility, just financially. We've put them up before; they're not bad.
Children at play would be a municipal responsibility.
The last time we request for children at play, I believe it was said to us that it would be our responsibility. I can confirm, certainly. Obviously, if it's not, we're not going to take it on.
If I may, there's a sign that
the message I received. Oh, sorry.
No, there's a sign that went up that I know of for an autistic child, and I do believe that we're the ones who did that as a municipality. So that I think that would probably fall under the same category.
Yeah, I think that's the sign I was thinking about. So that's not necessarily the same type of sign. It may still fall within TIR, but you're quite right. It was not children at play. It was an autistic child.
Right.
Like we'll ask TIR, and if they say no, then we'll bring it back.
So I just received some more information here as we're discussing it, and I believe he is looking for a speed limit sign, and if that's not possible, secondary children at play. So we'll keep that with the motion.
It's been moved and has been seconded by Councillor Bork. Councillor Bork, do you agree with the kind of the amendment he added on there? Great. Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand. On reminded left hand, motion carried. Okay, question period. CEO Muse, did you have anything on Facebook or anything? Good. Okay, no question period. That's done. Do we have a motion to go in camera?
Motion to go in camera.
Seconded by Councillor Digdon. All those in favor signify